Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to get started. I know we're a few minutes late, but we'll kick it off, and then if anybody else joins us, they can catch up. So thanks again for coming. Another town hall, the last one of 2024, and then we'll start into the new year. It's been almost 2 years, or no, it's over 2 years for me, which is it's gone by quick. But for the regular individuals that come and visit us at the town hall, thank you. Engagement with our residents is the best way for us to know some of the issues and concerns that are in the ward and how we can hopefully work with staff to try and fix some of those issues. For today's meeting, we do have a topic we'll go over, which is our 2025 budget and vacant unit tax. And then after that, we'll leave some time for Q&A on the presentation, and any Q&A that is not related to the budget, but you want to speak to me and staff about, or my staff, about any of your Ward 14 issues that you want to go over. So, Kirk Reaver's here. He's our director of, he's got a really long title, I'll let him say it. He's in our finance department, one of the top finance people at the city of Hamilton. He is going to talk about something that I'm sure is top of mind for a lot of people in the city of Hamilton, which is our tax-supported budget, and he'll give you sort of an overview of how they do it and how they crunch the numbers, and what council's sort of job is within this whole process. It's really not that big of a job for us. They do all the work, and we just say yay or nay, I think. So, Kurt, whenever you're ready, I'll let you come up, and then hopefully everybody enjoys the presentation.
Good evening. It's so the long title is Acting Director, Financial Planning, Administration and Policy, for those that think of interest. So the tax supporting budget process is just launched. Beginning November 18th, there was an opportunity for council to hear public delegations from those who are interested in coming out to speak to council about what their issues and of importance are. So that took place on November the 18th. And that'll lead up on the tax supported side to, we will issue a budget book with a bunch of materials on the proposed budget for 2025, either late this year or early in the new year. That will lead to a second public delegation meeting scheduled on January the 20th. So if you're interested in making a delegation on an issue related to the budget, you can do that then. The information on how to register will be on the city's website. Following that, between January 23rd and the end of the month, there's a series of presentations from departments, boards and agencies like police and the Conservation Authority also make presentations to council and committee. Allows council the opportunity to ask a number of questions, clarification, and then that leads into the budget deliberations where council will either make amendments to the budget or eventually adopt it, and the planned date is mid-February 2025 for that process. Go to the next slide. The budget process, there's been a couple of updates over the last couple of years, essentially to streamline the process, merging the tax capital process into a single process, and reducing the number of meetings for council deliberations in order to try and streamline the process. There's also been the addition of through strong mayor powers. The mayor has issued a directive in terms of how the budget should be prepared. So that's something that staff looks at when we're trying to put the budget together. Council referred items are also items that are in-year reports that council has considered that have budget implications. They form part of the budget materials as well. We've also tried to make improvements in the way we engage the public. I mentioned the 2 public delegation meetings, but we've also introduced a new tool this year called Balancing Act. So if you go to the next slide. There's a new tool launched just over a week ago on the city's website. It's an interactive tool that will allow members of the public to go online and make choices about where they want, where they see priority investments, and how to come up with a balanced budget. If you take funding away from one area and invest it in another, you need to come up with a balanced budget. and we'll be able to gauge residents' priorities through the reporting that comes out of that. We'll report back on the results of that in the new year to council. So some of the features, and I encourage you to go to the city's website and use that tool if you're interested in just seeing how choices and priorities have to be made in the area budget. So participants can adjust different areas of the budget, such as funding for public safety or infrastructure, social services, and see how that changes the overall impact on the budget. It will give you, as you're using it, real-time impact, so you can see the results of the choices you made immediately. It will also hopefully be more engaging than just coming and making a delegation to the committee and council, which can be a daunting thing for some people as well. It allows you to do this from the comfort of your own home and lead to hopefully enhanced transparency. So some of the key themes emerging in the 2025 budget process, if you go to the next one. So advancing the city's strategic priorities is something that's been on the radar in terms of sustainable economic and ecological development. And that's where we focus on affordability, new tools, revenue tools for the city. We're really limited to the property tax as our primary tool as a municipality. There's a focus on safe and thriving neighborhoods, and that's where a lot of the investments in housing sustainability and homelessness and poverty reduction, that's the area of focus where those investments go. Focusing on responsiveness and transparency, digital strategy, improving customer service is becoming an emphasis as well. And cybersecurity recovery is also high on our radar. We also, going to the next slide, what we've got there, build back better and stronger. That's a theme that is evolving as a result of the cybersecurity incident that we suffered earlier this year. And the goal is to build these systems back that were damaged, build better and stronger with more features, but also to improve the customer experience with these new systems. Some of them were at end of life, so it's an opportunity for us. While we weren't keen to have the cyber attack, we're using it as an opportunity to try and improve some of our systems going forward. Public health and safety is always a focus, and provincial legislative changes are something that affect municipalities in a significant way. In the past couple of years, it's been on legislation such as Bill 23 and Bill 185, which has impacted development and development charges and our ability to use that as a tool, a revenue tool, in a more significant way. There's also been some economic changes that are leading to fewer housing starts this year that are impacting some of our growth projections. So the outlook that we presented to committee in November, the city budget's a roadmap essentially that looks, we take a 3-year outlook, so we're looking at 2025 through 2027. We do a 10-year capital forecast as well. That takes you to 2033, 34, I guess I should say. And we look at in-year investments the council has made and consider legislative changes. Reserve financing has also been a significant part of the budget process in the last couple of years to try and mitigate tax increases. We've been embarked on a multi-year strategy using reserves to mitigate the tax impacts, and while they've still been significant, it would have been more significant if we didn't take advantage of the reserves that we have. So this is a busy graph, but it's intended to show, these are 2024 numbers. We're responsible for $2.4 billion in expenditures. We don't necessarily have full control over how those dollars, the services that are offered under those services, because they're provincially mandated. So things like social services, housing, public health, as well as some of our boards and agencies, police, have a separate governance model that doesn't allow the city council to influence the direct day-to-day operations as much as you might expect for having responsibility for collecting those funds from the taxpayer.
Do you have a similar graph that puts it in percentages?
I don't have that with me.
Okay.
It would be available. I could certainly provide that.
It also gives an impact very quickly, but instead of mentally doing the math on what you got in each of those pies.
Yes.
You know, we basically really impact exactly, they tell us exactly where the money's going to.
Yeah, happy to get that and provide it from the council's office.
Okay, thank you.
So revenues, similarly, most of our revenues come from the property tax base. So you'll see that almost half of the 1.1 billion comes from property taxes, with other amounts coming from 582 million comes from government grants and subsidies, fees, user fees for rec centers and other services that the city provides, planning fees, they're all included in that fees category as well. We do use annually funds from reserves, and our development charges revenue comes from growth-related
So
projects.
I'm going to ask questions as we go along. I
Sure.
apologize. Reserves, $183 million, significant portion of that $2.4 billion. If you're using reserves on a year-by-year basis, eventually you're going to use up your reserves, assuming you're not topping it up somewhere. I didn't see that in the other section where you're spending money, so where is the reserve money coming from?
So there will be reserve top-ups for things like asset management components, fleet reserves. There'll be contributions made from the property tax budget every year to reserves, and then we'll draw on those reserves as things like vehicles are replaced.
So why are you not showing it on the one that says that they're...
It would be built into each of the service areas.
So it's hidden in the other ones?
On this particular slide, it's not visible.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on this?
Sure.
Where does the cost of the link in the Red Hill fall?
It would be under transportation network.
Because I'm a big fan of pushing to get rid of it to the province, like Toronto. Love to know what it's costing us for policing, emergencies, maintenance, and see if we can make a deal like Toronto did.
Right. So I will say that when you mentioned policing, that won't be in the transportation number. That would be it.
But there's a cost to
But
this.
there, yes, so somebody would have to break that out. The cost specific to the link in the Red Hill policing wouldn't be in the transportation.
I would love to know that number, because I'm sure the province would be interested in something back from us.
Sure.
If Toronto can do it, why can't we?
The conversation's already happened.
And they're still going?
Yeah.
Or is it finished?
And I think it's tied to a lot with the expansion, like the province, to take on a roadway like the link in the Red Hill, for it to become, I think, a provision, and this is just me sitting at Public Works as the chair, I would think the province is gonna want us to do a little more research and a little deeper dive into what a cost to expand it would be. I don't know that the province is gonna be interested in taking on a roadway just because we want them to. I think we gotta sell it as, the link in the Red Hill are no longer for Hamilton people.
That's
It's
true.
for everyone. It's used as a way to transport goods.
Right.
So all those pieces need to be brought into the conversation, but they are conversations that are continuing.
Ongoing.
Yeah, and it'll continue alongside getting costs of what it's gonna cost to expand those roadways if that's, because they paid for 50% of the roadway when it was first built, right? So I think 50%, Kurt?
I believe that.
Whatever the cost is, I know we can't afford it.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So can I just ask something? I'm lost, no.
The previous one?
So reserves at 183 million, I'm still not understanding, is there a certain amount put aside every year as reserves?
So, you want to take?
So there's a certain amount every year that in the budget that is drawn from our reserves to help fund.
So at some point, these reserves were built up through what?
There's a variety of ways. So contributions from annual budgets to fleet or reserves, for example, are made annually in order to pay for future purchases to replace vehicles. There's other reserves such as development charge reserves, which we are collecting the revenue from developers as they build new homes and new commercial developments. So that gets collected from them and then used on specific growth-related projects that form part of the budget. So there's a couple of different ways that those reserves are built up.
Can you give an approximate idea of how much you build up per year in reserves and how much compared to the 183 million you take out?
It's going to vary from year to year.
roughly?
I just think that it's hard to understand how, when I think of a reserve, this is money that you put away for a rainy day or something like that.
Yep.
I'm not seeing that from the way it's being described to me. This just sounds like this is there's some kind of alternate stream here that we don't understand as you have money coming in and you call it a reserve.
So, yeah, I think what's happening is when we budget X amount of dollars for a certain department, if X amount of dollars aren't spent, for whatever reason, that money would go into reserve, that project gets delayed, that money would go into the reserve. And DCs, we can't budget for DC reserves, because when the houses get built, we collect the money. And we can only spend development charge reserves on very specific things. You're not allowed to spend it on anything you want, it's only for
So
certain
it's a
things.
case of where you budget so much for these certain areas, and then when they don't use that entire budget, you put that aside as a reserve. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's one of them.
That's one of the ways, yes.
Is the reserve invested?
Yes,
There's, see at the bottom of the investment income there?
Okay, so,
I believe that's from our.
That's correct.
Yeah.
okay, good.
So when I ask that question, am I looking at $50 million in reserves per year, you're taking out 183, or are we getting in at 180, you're taking out 183?
we are getting,
Approximately.
we're getting more in than we're taking out, so it would be,
Oh, okay. That is the answer I wanted.
I have a question. How much of the reserves was used last year to keep the tax rate down? They borrowed from reserves, correct, to bring the tax rate down?
yes.
Yeah, I just, a rough number, was it 5 million, 20 million?
Last year, for 2024, there was about 65 million.
65 million from reserves to keep our tax rate down.
Yes.
So
That's,
that's like a third of what's there. So you can deplete that reserves very quick if we try to keep that tax rate down.
It's not a sustainable way.
Yeah, it's a moving target.
Yes.
Just wanted, thank you.
I got one more question for the next slide when we get to
We're going, okay, Sam, let's move back, there we go.
Okay.
Sorry. Out of all the money we're spending on these bike lanes and pathways and everything else, where is that coming out of that money right now?
Transportation.
It would be a transportation network.
Transit.
In transit or transit?
Transportation, the 383.
Yeah.
383? That's $383 million.
No, that's $383 of the average tax bill of $5,100 in the center there. So this is showing you the average tax bill based on an average home
So
and the proportion and what services that $5,100 makes up.
so that's about 8% of my tax money.
Sorry?
5,100, 383, sorry,
Need a calculator.
yeah, well, 7%.
So it's 7 or 8%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Kurt, just so everybody knows, the average home, here you're showing $5,166 in property tax. That's based on what assessed value?
Average assessed home in Hamilton is $386,000.
So we're
So
getting
is that-
5166 for $380,000 home.
Yes, and keep in mind, the assessed value of homes is based on 2016 values because the province has not
Yeah.
updated the assessment.
So when they do that, we're all gonna get whacked.
No, you'll want to hear the answer for this. You're not going to be paying taxes on your newly $2 million home that all of a sudden is not worth. There's a formula that they use that Kirk can explain to you what happens.
Yeah, so provincial regulations don't allow the city to get additional revenue from reassessment. So if your home is assessed at $400,000 from 2016, and the reassessment, whenever they do it, goes up to $600,000, the city is required to reduce its tax rates so that we don't get any additional revenue from that particular increase.
Until it's sold.
Until it's sold, then the valuation, but this is on the reassessed portion. When they do the reassessment, we have to adjust our tax rates so that we don't.
So this is true all over Ontario.
Yes, provincial legislation.
We
Is
have,
it-
oh, sorry, Jim.
No, does it creep up slowly? Is there a formula to let it creep up slowly?
No.
No, it's.
Well, sorry, on the reassessment of the province, traditionally, they phased in the impacts, any impacts over 4 years. However, they haven't done a reassessment in 8 years, so I'm not quite sure, we're awaiting sort of how they're going to approach reassessment after 8 years and how that might work.
We've noticed some houses on the lower mountain that have been assessed at, or selling for 1.4 million, but are assessed at less than what we're paying up in the mountain for a house that's 800,000. Has
Yes.
that ever been adjusted?
Assessed values are going to be at the 2016 value. MPAC will adjust them if renovations are made to them or updates or changes are made that they become aware of, they might adjust your assessment on an individual basis, but there has not been a province-wide reassessment since 2016.
So you can't do anything if they do it?
MPAC is responsible for doing the assessment. The city does not do property assessments.
Okay.
All right.
It's the equation.
Next one, Sam, or?
Yeah.
Let's get off of that, right?
He says help.
Okay, so this slide is outlining some of the principles that the city is using in developing its 2025 budget process. We're looking to support council's strategic plan and priorities that they have set back in 2023. We're looking to align with asset management plans, so that municipalities are required to complete asset management plans and understand what the investment is required to keep those assets up to date. As I mentioned, we need to align with the mayoral directive. Mayor Horvath has not set out a particular target, but has provided a series of directions around balancing affordability with the need for investment in infrastructure and ask staff to sort of come up with as balanced approach as we can. So that's how we build that budget.
So let me ask another question. Have those priorities been set yet for 2025? In detail?
Those priorities were set
2020.
early 2020, so we were in 2022, November we became elected. Early 2023, council priorities were created and adopted for the entire term.
Okay, have you got a list of those priorities in order, from highest to lowest?
I don't think there's an order. There's a list,
should be an
but
order.
it's not an order.
Let's put it this way. If someone's saying, hey, I want to fix the roads in my city compared to putting a whole bunch of bike lanes to block up traffic somewhere else,
But you're one voice like I'm one vote.
I hear
So
you.
my priority might be up here and this council's priorities might be up
Exactly.
and flip-flop. So you can't look at council priorities and say, well, Councilor Spatafora, you don't like trees?
yeah,
Then trees should not be a priority. It's not how it works. So we went there, we created priorities, and, I think you'll shift throughout the term as to because things change during the term,
Absolutely.
right? Times change, all things, no one created council priorities with knowing that we were gonna have a cyber attack that was gonna shut our city down, right? So I think priorities can change. We're not changing, if that answers your question. The priorities that were set are gonna be priorities for the term.
so all I want to know is what those priorities are.
And with that draft you asked for, we're gonna give you the priorities.
Perfect, thank
All
you.
right.
I have three.
Oh, yeah?
There's three
Oh,
large buckets. So there's sustainable economic and ecological development, safe and thriving neighborhoods, and working with City Hall transparency and municipal government are the three main priorities that council adopted.
Okay.
And the last piece that you go to the back to
So
the,
for thriving neighborhoods is Main Street two-way conversion?
yes.
Why?
You want me to answer that? More of a political question than a finance. Yeah, he can answer why we're spending that, why it costs that much. So, how can I put this? So Main Street conversion is based on making Main Street more inclusive for more than just vehicles. So when they talk about doing a two-way conversion, we're talking about making it more pedestrian friendly, cyclist friendly.
Why don't we just shut it down then?
That's probably been asked in some of our meetings. So that's basically where we're going, and there's different reports that have come forward that show that the benefits to two-way conversion, I don't have them all off the top of my head, but there's been reports that have been brought by staff that, you know, would show you that this is something that could help a safe and again, the safe part would be pedestrians, you know, some people would classify Main Street as like a 4 or 5 lane highway. If you catch all the lights, you're driving at 80 kilometers an hour through downtown Hamilton, where people are walking, crossing the street, riding their bikes. So that's where the safe and thriving neighborhoods come from. Also small businesses, they'll talk about the fact that small businesses would garner more business if they had people walking or felt safe walking down there and going into their shops, as opposed to 4 lanes of traffic all firing down the middle of
I
downtown.
love hearing this stuff, but 26.5 million, how are you gonna get that back? What return on your investment are you getting from this?
You're really not, as a city, we're not getting the return on investment. Now, keep in mind, of the 26 million, 14 million of that was allocated through our capital budget, because that was the cost, correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, on redoing Main Street. So Main Street needs to be redone anyway, like the asphalt needed to be redone. So part of that 26, I believe, was 14 million of it is just to redo it. But again, downtown, we can't do what we do in Ward 14, we shave the asphalt and put new asphalt. Down there, we have to do full underground work, because the infrastructure downtown is so old. It's combined sewers, so we mix sewage and stormwater all together, which costs more money when we send it down. So there's a lot more, but I totally understand where we're seeing historic tax increases, spending $26 million to convert a road. It's bumper to bumper now. What is it going to look like when we convert it to two-way? All great questions.
Mike, can I sort of flip this on the other hand? Do you remember when council, many years ago, decided to really redo King Street between Wellington Street and I think Bay, to basically put in these little islands where people can park so they can slow down traffic and make downtown boom, because traffic is going to be able to slow down and more pedestrian friendly and all this other stuff?
I don't remember it, but Kirk might. I don't know how long Kirk's been here, no?
No.
Okay, neither of us remember.
I'm an old fart, sorry. I remember this, okay? And it was all out there, same kind of wording you just used, that you're passing, I know it's not your words,
Yep.
but it's coming on that, hey, if we do all this, make it safer, this business is gonna boom, small business is gonna do this. Look down at King Street between Wellington Street and Bay Street right now and tell me how many businesses are boarded up, got graffiti all over them. Nobody wants to walk down there once the sun goes down, right? How many people have been shot down there in the last year or two?
Mhm.
And that's not because of traffic, right?
I understand.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
So it's going to take a lot more than changing these streets to two-way to make people feel safe downtown. Like as you were saying, it's disgraceful. I would not, when I started working way back 50 years ago, I worked in Jackson Square. And I didn't feel 100% safe then, but now I work for the federal government out of the building on Bay Street, and we've been at home for 4 years, and they're mandating us back to the office, and I'm choosing to retire because I am afraid to go to work downtown. And many of my colleagues, same thing. They've been attacked.
Yep.
You know, you gotta go through the cocaine addicts to get into the federal building there. Like, two-way streets is not gonna fix that.
In fact, it's gonna make it worse for businesses. You got employees going down there, everything else. Like, I had to, because of personal reasons, travel from Dundas back by Wentworth and Barton. That's where I'm working right now. And I'll tell you something, coming down Main Street in the middle of the day, which is not rush hour, I was surprised it took me about 20 minutes to get from the cathedral basic area by City Hall, right? Because traffic was bumper to bumper, it was nuts. And I was wondering why, no construction going on, it was just another traffic. You reduce that down either way, plus adding bike lanes, because that's really what you're talking about, right? And I'm saying that nobody uses, that's the second thing I'm gonna say, right? And you're gonna do this, council needs to shake their head, bang it against the wall, and look up and see what the hell's going on.
We'll make sure you use that enhanced tool in public delegations, because I say my piece, and
I
you
know.
can listen to my piece, and maybe we agree and maybe we don't agree, but,
Heather and I were trying,
let it,
the other
I
day,
noticed,
on several roads, where all the new bike lanes are,
yeah.
with all the, everything. We saw two people on bikes, and guess what, they were on the sidewalks.
Well, let's get through the budget, because
Okay.
guess what, Kirk only does the budgeting. He unfortunately doesn't get the vote on bike lanes, he just allocates money as
I know.
council tells him to. So,
Yeah,
what do we got, Kirk? Uh-oh, budget.
So I don't get to vote on the budget either.
No, you don't.
So this slide, every year, we do a multi-year outlook. So last year in the 2024 budget, we were projecting an 8.2% tax increase for 2025. So that in November, we brought an outlook report that showed council we're looking at 6.9% based on where we were at that time. And the changes, this slide shows some of the changes that got us there. So a change in assessment growth, that every year a new assessment comes on stream, new buildings, new developments come on stream, and it increases our assessment base, and we get additional revenue from that. We typically assume a 1%, but over the last number of years it's been closer to 1.4%, so we've adjusted our assumption by 0.4% that achieved a benefit of 4.4% on the property tax base. Deferred reassessment, I talked about the MPAC hasn't done a reassessment. We were anticipating an impact in 2025 if they did a reassessment. That's not happening, so there would be 1.2% benefit there. And then generally department savings, I don't have a list of what specific items are included in there, but that was a 0.8%. And then the add backs during the year, council approved a number of reports, a number of them were detailed on the previous slide where you were focusing on the Main Street conversion. So reducing housing and homelessness, the investments there are adding 0.3%. 911 call center at Waterdown Station, 0.2%. Conversion, 0.2. Paramedics Central Reporting Station is being developed, that would be another 0.2. And cost of lodge and some other items, 0.1. So that gets us to the 6.9% as our starting point for 2025.
and what's our current inflation rate right now?
Just under, 2.5, I think.
So you're 3 times what our inflation rate is right now, asking for 6.9%, right? And I understand that Hamilton is the highest tax municipality in North America right now.
Is that a question? I don't have that, I'm not sure if that's the case.
It is close, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, let's say we're in the top 10%. And for the services we're getting, roads falling apart, sewers and everything else backed up, literally, for various reasons. And we're looking at other things than just that can drive businesses into the city, that would use their tax money to help offset this. You're going to block up our roads, which means businesses are going to have to pay extra money. They won't want to come to Hamilton, right? People are going to want to be downtown, not at all, right?
Don't take it out on Kirk.
I'm not thinking, you guys are just messengers and everything else, right? But
6.9 is just an outlook, don't get excited, could go up. You want to go to the next slide, Sam? There you go.
Poor Christine.
Yeah, a lot of emails tomorrow for
So I'll talk a little bit about the significant housing investments that have been made in the last, particularly in the last year or so, and that's been driving the 2024 budget increase to a significant degree. And I think that's part of what's driving some of these increases as well. The need to address the housing crisis and the need that has been placed largely on the backs of property taxpayers, and we need provincial and federal support to really address this. So the next slide is total investments of $185.9 million. $125 million of that is coming from the city, with 11% coming from the federal government and 22% coming from the provincial government. It just demonstrates the need. The need is there, but but it's not something, when the municipality only has essentially the property tax base to rely on, it's very difficult for us to address those needs and still maintain a level of affordability for the residents that are living here currently. Capital investments have also been significant in the planned capital investments that affects the impact of the tax levy. So you'll see 2025, 6.9% is the outlook, 3.61% of that is related to capital investments. For transportation asset management, non-core, so all other asset management plans, the paramedics, the police, fire will all have asset management plans that need to be addressed through capital investments. We also have some significant issues with development charge exemptions. So the province, the legislation has limited what we can, or introduced a number of exemptions to our development charges regime that we then need to fund from the property tax base, which is creating some significant challenges. Despite they did walk back some of the exemptions, but there's still a significant number of them that are impacting the annual property tax base.
I see debt on that slide.
Yes,
Is the city carrying a debt?
yes.
How much debt are we carrying?
It'll be, I don't have the number off the top of my head. We'll have approved debt of close to $1 billion. It hasn't all been issued, but it's approved, so we have to plan for its repayment.
The city's carrying a debt of $1 billion when our budget is $2.4 billion a year?
It's planned over the 10 years, that debt. So it hasn't all been issued, so we're not carrying it yet.
And that debt would carry an interest charge of 6 or 7, 8%?
No, the city can get favorable interest rates. It would be in the neighborhood of 3 to 4% currently.
That's what the service.
Yeah, that's what so in 2025, so Kurt, I'm gonna ask you a question because this might make it easier. 1% on the levy equals how much? About 12 million?
About 13 million.
13 million. So 1%, so when you see like 6.9, then 1% is about 13 million. So when say we reduce 1% or we go up 1%, it's about a $13 million swing. Just so you have an idea of what 1%
So
is.
3.61% is times 13 million?
That'd be
15 million.
the 3.61% on the total net for levy impact.
Is whatever 13
Yeah.
times
That's what,
3.61 is.
just one. I always let
Can't
him
do that like that.
He knows the right answer.
Basically, 3% debt, you're paying off about $300,000 a year in the debt only, is that right?
No. So each 1% is 13
13
million.
million.
So
13
that,
million?
so 3.61 is gonna be north of 39 million.
39 million
North of
dollars.
40 million.
40 million.
$40 million per year in debt.
No.
No,
You're
that's,
paying
no,
down the debt.
Interest.
paying principal and interest.
Interest.
Well, principal as well.
Yeah, sorry.
So they're getting favorable interest rates, roughly the same as inflation? That doesn't make sense.
The banks are losing
People
money.
don't lend money at the inflation.
When we issue debt, we issue serial bonds over a 10 or 15-year period in the open market, and so
Oh, okay, so you made those bonds when the inflation rate was probably 0.5% type of thing?
So this is not debt that we have issued, this is debt that we are planning to issue as part of the 10-year plan. So we need to,
So you're taking on $1 billion worth of debt?
yes.
Over 10 years.
Oh, that's the financial plan, is one of the strategies to address.
And of course, the risk of that is if, again, there's talk of high inflation rate, if Trump ever has his tariff on us. So that interest rate could go skyrocketing, which means the debt, having to pay back the debt will go skyrocketing.
There is that risk. We do manage our debt portfolio because and this is one of the advantages of having a reserve where you're investing those reserves. We are, for the most part, able to pay for our capital projects with existing cash while they're being built, and then we would issue the debt at the most advantageous time to get the best rate. So we have not issued debt since, I think, 2021. We're looking at doing it in the next year or so with the improved interest rates that have come out lately.
And you took the biggest charge on 2025, and then it reduces it.
Yes.
The counselors aren't very smart, but these guys, for the most part, are pretty good. Counselors, no comment. You got a question?
And what is this debt for?
Capital works,
Capital
roads,
works.
bridges, all capital stuff,
So-
infrastructure.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I'm hearing is, yes, all this stuff that you just said is really, really important. The city needs it desperately.
Okay.
So you're taking on debt, so other things like your transportation, your homelessness, your two-way street conversion, and everything else can go ahead. You're doing the old shuffle.
Well, we haven't, like Kurt just said, we haven't taken on debt since 2021,
I hear you,
and we haven't issued debt yet.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But all I'm seeing is, as far as priorities, I hear more of the social issues are being prioritized above the infrastructure priorities.
That could be, that could be true.
Well, everything you presented so far is saying that.
We only through slide, we got lots more still.
I shut up, right?
So at the end, you can tell me that.
Okay.
But what I will say is if the alternative to not issuing debt is that we put it all on the property tax base from day one.
Or you be smart with our money,
That's a better idea.
okay?
Or
And I know
you-
you wanted the audit, and I wish they would do that, right? No offense, right? But, you know, you gotta look and say, you can have the pie in the sky kind of wishes, of what you wanna do to make things better in the city, but you gotta look at the basics first, before you look at anything else.
All right, Kurt,
All right.
that's not for you to answer.
Yeah.
He's talking to me, not you.
No, I'm not, I wish I had the rest of the counselors here.
I'm coming on that one too.
So I think this
I'm
is
a mouthpiece.
This is my last slide on the tax side. It just shows sort of the plan and, for the next 3 years, and the residential impact, and highlights that the capital financing, and the need for, the plans for infrastructure investment are driving significant portions of those increases, as well as, boards of agencies, which include police and conservation authorities primarily.
So could I ask you, what was 2024? You have 6.9 for 2025.
5.79. 5.8.
So our tax increase will be greater than that.
That's the starting point. Council will have the opportunity to
Go up or down.
make it go whichever direction.
Don't get too comfortable on the down part.
Yeah, well, I was just.
And keep in mind, there's reserves, right? So last year, call it 5.8, we still did, it wasn't 5.8. It was 5.8 plus utilization of X amount of reserves. I can't remember off the top of my head, just like the 6.9% for this year is plus, how many millions in reserves?
That was the 2024 number, was 65 million.
So, but as a constituent, I should walk away considering that my tax increase is going to be higher this year.
By the looks of it right now, I would prepare for something around that number. Give or take, but I don't know that we're gonna be under 5.8. I mean, you'll see amendments coming from me, but I put them forward, if they don't pass, then the amendment don't matter, right? So,
Here, quick questions. If last year you used 65 million out of the reserves, and roughly 13 million is 1%, does that mean the tax rate would have been 5% higher?
11?
Yeah, give or take, yes.
Right, it would have been 10%.
In the 11.
Right, okay, just wanted to clarify.
Time to move.
Moving on to the rate budget.
I got it laughing, right?
And the best part is Kirk's bailing out our general manager of finance too, because he's sick. So, he threw Kirk under the bus. He's probably at home having a drink right now.
The bus has a big budget.
You're doing a great job, buddy.
Thanks. So the rate budget, the water, wastewater, and stormwater budget, we should call it rate for short. It's underway and largely complete at this point. November 22nd, it was presented to GIC, General Issues Committee, second meeting on the 28th, where the council received it, and it's in the process now with the strong mayor powers where it'll become adopted probably on December the 11th at the council meeting. So some of the key themes there are around efficiencies. Development charge exemptions also impact the rate budget similarly to the tax budget. Moving to a stormwater funding model doesn't affect 2025, but that's something that's on the horizon beginning in 2026. Flooding and drainage master plan was introduced to council. That will have significant investment needs over the next 10 years, as well as infrastructure capital, significant investments in water, wastewater treatment plant, water and wastewater treatment plants are being planned over the next 10 years, all influencing the rate budget.
How much per year for the wastewater treatment plant? I mean, what's massive rate?
Oh, yeah, like, so the Dundas wastewater treatment plant's end of life, and so part of the 10-year strategy is to fund that. What's the Dundas water treatment, do you know what the cost is around that? It's over 300 million, isn't it?
Yes, it is significant.
Just for one.
Yeah, just for Dundas, and then there's a bunch of investments going to Woodward.
Upgrades. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you guys drink for water, that's one that I have a hard time arguing against. So, White Lanes of water.
So again, we have a 10-year plan for the water, wastewater, and stormwater. It'll be a 9.95% increase in 2025, and it's this is the second year of a 10-year plan that would see the average bill increase 10% a year over the next 10 years in order to fund those significant investments at the Woodward Water Treatment Plant and Dundas Treatment Plant.
What's that on an average house? Is it 170?
I've got a slide on that.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be $1,061 on the average residential home.
Per year?
For water.
Yeah, for the water bill for the year.
For the year.
Yeah,
That's the increase, or that's?
No, the increase is $96.10 over last year. Last year was average bill was $965.
So you're saying out
So
of the
they're paying for us.
$5,100, we're paying $1,000 is just for the, per year?
It's not included in the 5,100.
This is separate from your 51.
So that's on-
That's property taxes. This is
Water
your
bill.
water rate.
Additional.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, no, just sit tight, you're gonna love it.
My Scottish blood is kicking in.
Should have brought alcohol.
This slide just summarizes. This slide summarizes where the 2025 rate budget, what it's made up of. The operating costs, program expenditures, so rate revenue that comes from water users is $324 million. We do get some non-rate revenue, which is largely made up of contributions from developers connecting, as well as we do sell some water to Alta Region and Haldeman County as part of long-term agreements, but that's a smaller portion of our revenue base.
Just to compare Halton, by the way, they're going through a whole water treatment renewal themselves right now.
Okay.
Have you even thought of comparing what you're being estimated against what they are paying to see if you're in line?
We have a number of comparators. So, and I do actually have a slide from that.
Yeah, you're good.
This is just a graph showing that the key driver of the 9.95% increase is capital financing. It's infrastructure capital as opposed to the operating budget. So on the operating budget, it's largely flat year over year this year, with about a $400,000 increase over last year. That's all helped by an efficiency that Hamilton Water staff identified last year that's being implemented in 2025, bringing the utility locate service from an outside contractor to an in-house program. So these are some big numbers. So our capital program in 2025 is planned for about $315 million. That shows the breakdown between water, wastewater, and stormwater services. There's a 3-year block there that in the next 3 years, 4 years, we're looking at about $1.9 billion in investment in water and wastewater. And the capital program over the next 10 years is about $4.5 billion.
So will this address, I mean, I don't know if this is your area, But we all heard about the wastewater going into the bay and that kind of thing. Is this going to address that now, or is this just to do
Some of these investments are intended to address those issues. I'm not an expert, so I couldn't speak to the service side of things, but I do know that some of the capital investments and the reports that Hamilton Water has brought to council are intended to address some past issues.
And some of this is based on growth too, right? So in order to be able to take on growth, we gotta build the capacity to take that growth on. And that's all built into this. But all those issues we've had with water over the past few years, that's all tied into this, to try to rectify some of those, better monitoring of our, sewage output and all that sort of stuff, so we can handle the capacity better and make sure it doesn't go where it shouldn't go.
Just out of curiosity, Mike, where are we getting the growth? I thought we're limited to expanding any part of residential expansion anywhere in the city.
Well, there's still extensive growth that could happen within. So I mean, yes, if you're looking where we are right now, besides, the Valeri development that'll come and the development that happened here, when you're looking inner city, it doesn't look like there's a lot of growth, but when you look at the amount of growth growth area that's approved in like the Winona area, coming that way, like there's a ton of expansion that could happen that's not in that urban boundary expansion argument that we have. And you don't know what's going to happen. Like their growth is going to happen at some point. Right now, with the provincial legislation, if we don't want to expand past the urban boundary, that doesn't mean they can't. They have a route now to go straight to the provincial government. They can bypass the municipality. So there are some non-greenbelt lands that can be built on, for sure. So the growth is coming, and our population projection for
2051 is 860.
Yeah, so the provincial estimation for the city of Hamilton, we're gonna be close to 900,000. As of right now, are we at 600 yet? Are we just over?
Not quite.
Not quite, so
Okay.
it's a lot of people.
And when you say growth, are we talking individual detached homes or apartment buildings?
All of it.
All of it is a mixture?
Well, it's all growth, right?
Yeah.
I know.
If you put up a 10-story and there's, whatever, 200 units.
Where's the direction going though? Is it 10-story or is it individual homes?
I would say currently today,
Yeah.
it's all intensification. It's not single-family detached.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's all intensification for sure.
What's the projection on growth on industry? We need industry to help reduce the residential taxes. So,
Kirk can speak to that because he knows the breakdown of, like, our industrial commercial bases.
is it
So,
Yeah, so it's about 86 to, no, it's 88 to 12 ratio, residential to
that's awful.
commercial.
that's terrible.
And it takes a lot of new non-residential assessment to move the needle, because unless non-residential growth is outpacing residential, you're not changing the ratio.
Just as a point, 50 years ago, that number was reversed. Industrial was about 80 and residential was 20, because of all the industry was down to Bayfront, all of that is gone. So that's why Hamilton is a poor city, essentially.
And the most taxed.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, one of the reasons that ratio it impacts residential because almost all of our assessment base is residential.
And has anybody ever thought of how to change that needle by making things more conducive for businesses coming here instead of Kitchener or Woodstock or?
I know that our planning and economic development folks are thinking about that regularly.
I've heard that for decades. Sorry. Okay.
We're still on water, yeah.
Yes, so this is the slide you were asking about, or somebody mentioned about the increase. So the $96 translates into $1,061 on your water bill in 2025. And that's based on an average residential customer who uses approximately 200 cubic meters of water a year.
Okay.
So if we're gonna have all this growth, aren't they chipping in?
Yep.
Yes.
So it's still gonna cost us more?
Yep, they're planning on it.
For the water,
for everything. So if I have my house now, I pay $50 a year, because that's what it costs. And he buys the house next to me, he's gonna pay $50 a year. Why am I paying 52 now? It's the same, you know what I mean?
Would
With
you're,
all this growth you're saying,
Yes.
going on and all that stuff,
yeah,
aren't they gonna chip in with their taxes?
So Mike,
They
what
are.
you,
Right,
There-
so
we
why are,
we haven't built the growth isn't there yet, and we have something like the Dundas wastewater plant that's end of life, like we can't, it's no good. So we have to fix it, so how are we gonna pay for it?
so we increase taxes now, then when all these people move in, you're
Good
gonna
luck.
decrease
Oh,
their
yeah.
taxes, right? Yeah.
I'll be, you guys will vote me out by then, so I won't have to worry
oh,
about it.
heaven help
You're
us.
the only normal one in there, you're not voting out, don't worry.
Let me ask a question. In all your projections over the next 10 years, have you projected the extra revenues from the extra growth
That's what I would ask.
in it?
Development charges.
Have you projected that to be part of that?
So I'm gonna answer the first part. Projections are not ours. Projections come from the provincial government,
Yep.
so we use their projection. But I'll let Kirk answer the part if we, because I believe you guys do,
And
plan
so
for growth.
we do plan for revenue from new growth. That's the 1.4% in assessment growth that you saw earlier.
So if it doesn't happen, we're knackered.
Then we come to you and
That's
say
true.
we need to find 1.4%.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It-
I got one other question. In your whole look at this, have you looked at the age difference with people in this city? Because, again, a lot of people are retiring, right? They're coming to fixed incomes right now. They can't look at this, so they may be, yeah, in individual homes and everything else. This goes on, the provincial government goes on, and heaven help us, the federal government keeps on spending money. That all comes back down into the people who are no longer working and not able to increase their revenues coming in. So basically, you're putting a huge burden, just that little bit there, for people who are already retired, could be a thing for them to basically become homeless.
I hear you loud and clear.
So have you looked at, has anybody looked at the age difference in the people? Because I don't see a lot of young people coming into the city. Most of our young people try to get out of here as fast as they can.
I would say we do have those statistics.
Yep.
And those things are talked about when we're deliberating, to say we're thinking about those seniors on fixed incomes and
Yep.
low-income seniors.
Yep.
We do, not every senior who's retired is, well, they got a big pension, but there's low-income seniors that, they struggle to live. Those comments are made, but again, that doesn't mean it changes the outcome of the vote.
No, because they don't care.
I can only speak for myself. I don't
understand.
know why they do it. But yeah, I mean,
You're one
those-
voice in the whole thing.
those conversations, staff brings those things to us when they provide reports. All those statistics are part of staff's reports.
Yep.
But then staff's hands they're out of it. They provide the information, then the 16 people around the table make the decision based on what they feel is the best thing for the city or their residents or themselves or however else they get to that point.
Okay.
And there are some rebate or incentive programs for low-income seniors in the tax side and on the water side. It's a question you could ask whether that's enough, but there are some programs in place to address that. So this slide is the one somebody asked about comparators. So historically, the city of Hamilton's had some of the lowest water rates among our comparators, and some of that is due to the fact that we haven't made these significant investments, so that's starting to happen now. And you'll get the 2024 number is 965, if it goes up to 1,061, you'll see we start moving up towards the mid-range of our comparators.
So next year is 1,061, right?
Yep.
Holton, I know, has already been 3 years into redoing all their water and wastewater systems in 3 areas, that I know of. So they've already taken that into account, so their numbers are not gonna go up at all, right? Durham, I think, has done the same thing.
I don't know what their plans are for 2025, these are their 2024 numbers.
Yeah. I know Holton and Durham, they've already renewed their stuff already.
Keep in mind they're wealthier regions than we are, right?
Yeah, I know, that's the other issue.
Because they don't pay as much taxes.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of social, they don't fund a lot of social services yet.
That's our problem. Why are
Yeah.
we funding so
We'll
many
get to that
social?
later, okay? Kurt, that's
So-
not part of Kurt's presentation.
So
Troops have-
Okay.
we are, we do try to balance this need for investment that I've talked about with affordability, but it is a delicate balancing act. You see, this slide is something that we monitor. We participate in a study with a group of municipalities across the province. So we're currently, one of the measures of affordability that we look at is percentage of household income that's used for the water bill. We're currently below the survey average. With our 10-year plan, unfortunately, we're trending to be above the average in order to make these capital investments. So that's something that council will have to wrestle with. And also, one of the things I want to mention on this slide is we really need, for these significant investments, some provincial and federal support to help with these investments. And if we're successful in that endeavor, it can bring that 1.7% down to a more manageable number.
Yeah, but
When
then
you-
you're,
Hold on.
sorry.
When you look at these numbers, and you remember the first chart you had, for example, I'm going to pick Brantford because I know enough about Brantford. It's a little higher than Hamilton. But do you take into account the fact that a lot of, in the Brantford area especially, there's a lot of cisterns and well water systems as opposed to city water? So they're not paying anything. I guess that kind of goes against what I'm saying, right?
Not only that, they got a lot more industry in Brantford right now than we do.
Yeah.
I think when they do these compares, they would compare it to people that are on city water, not,
Right, so there's going
because
to
we
be,
have people, out-
there's less people on city water in Brantford than there is in Hamilton.
less people, yes.
Yes.
Also the less need for
So-
investment from them, right? Like they don't need a Woodward wastewater plant like we need because of our population, right? So,
Well, it's
They
just
don't
because
need
they
the
have
investment.
other sources, right? A lot of houses have cisterns and a lot of them have wells. So.
yeah, so they don't need that
They don't
as
need
much
that.
volume. Yep.
So really, they're paying less. So there's fewer people paying into it.
I'm just missing, is stormwater
Not on the,
In Hamilton it is,
in Hamilton?
but not all municipalities have stormwater in their water wastewater rates.
So that could
That,
account for some
Yes.
of the differences.
yes, that's why there's different colors there, so yeah, that can certainly account for some of the differences.
the green has a separate storm fee, all the ones in green. Yeah. And then the-
Yes.
I was trying to go.
It's
by
not,
the
it's not a great, I'll make sure I tell the water people it's not a great spot.
Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna wrap up with,
Oh, yay.
the vacant unit tax. So the city's bringing in a new vacant unit tax to encourage, as part of the housing strategy, is to encourage people with vacant residential units to put their house on the market, occupy it in some way. It's a 1% of your assessed value. The process it begins in January of 2025 based on your occupancy in 2024. If your home was less than 6 units and vacant for more than 183 days, you'd be eligible for the tax unless it meets one of the 5 or 6 exemptions that are in the bylaw. And part of the way we're going to roll that out is through mandatory declaration, where you have to submit online, or you can do it by paper, but we have an online portal that will be launched to allow you to declare the status of your home in 2024, beginning in January.
What would be the revenue from that tax? What's the estimate?
The estimated revenue was, and we don't know exactly how many are vacant, we made some estimates. So I think the revenue is about $4 million, about
What's the cost of running the program?
2.2 million.
So,
So
Very poor.
all the net revenue that is generated would go into housing initiatives. Is the plan.
so the
So
whole,
how are you gonna police that?
Let's talk, why don't we do this? Let's let Kurt go through the process of it, because whether we like it or not, and just keep in mind, I voted against the vacant unit tax, and I'll explain why, but let's let Kurt go through the process, because whether we like it or not, I can't force anybody to do it, but most people are gonna have to submit the declaration, so let's find out what we have to do, and then we can speak about whether or not it's a good idea to have this tax.
okay.
Go ahead.
So this month, a letter should go out to all property owners with a code and instructions on how to declare. The declaration period will begin in January, stay open until the end of March. Once that declaration period closes, we'll accept late declarations up to the end of April. We'll then take all of that data that we have and any that have been declared that they are vacant, we will begin to issue the first bills with your tax. It'll show up on your tax bill in June if your property is declared or deemed vacant in that time period. After that first billing, there'll be an opportunity to appeal or complain if you have not, if you believe your home was occupied and we billed you incorrectly. And then the actual tax will be billed in 2 installments, similar to your final tax bills during the year in June and September would be due.
Is this only residential buildings or citizen buildings?
Residential homes, 6 units or less.
Sorry, 61.
6 units or less.
60.
Yeah, so it's not high-rise apartments, but single residential homes, townhomes.
Row houses?
So the
Yeah.
little guy,
Just curious.
The little guy, pick on the little guy.
Residential home with an extra unit in it, it's not going to be included in this?
if they're living there.
It would be
What if I had
if
a
we're using MPAC data, so if it's designated by MPAC as having a
So if I just had
rentable
a
unit,
house that
if
was
that would
empty,
be
I would
captured.
have to pay a
Okay,
tax.
so Kurt,
Yeah. Why
have
wouldn't
you
you
done the
put it
vacant? Can we start
Because
asking
the last
questions
thing I put
now?
something in, trash my
Sure,
house.
can you start?
Yes, my
But I
turn.
have children, I want to give
I'm
them.
just a super analytical kind of guy.
They
So,
have to start
my understanding, yeah, no
They should
kidding.
live there.
So,
Right, it's
my
all-
understanding, Mike, is the whole reason for doing this is to try to get people into homes instead of living on the streets or being reported.
You talking about the vacant unit tax?
Yeah,
It's a cash grab.
Yes, it's I'm not gonna do a good job explaining because I voted against it because I didn't agree with it.
yeah,
So, and what it means is if there's houses that are vacant,
yeah,
that, let's say, landlords from different countries
yeah,
are sitting on property,
yeah.
we're hoping, or the people, or the program is hoping that we can get, because instead of you paying the vacant unit tax, you're gonna put it on the market for rent.
Right,
And if you're not going to, then we're gonna charge you for having a vacant unit that's not able to be used in the housing, the potential for housing. So we have people that are looking for rentals, housing, anything, because there are no housing inventory.
right.
This is a way to try to get some empty inventory back on the market. And if you don't put it back on the market, I would assume then you would get hit with the tax after 183 days of it being empty and you declaring and us finding out and us sending you the bill.
Okay, can I ask why you voted against it?
I voted against it because I do not believe it's going to be revenue neutral. Right now, Kirk, the report is saying that we're going to make money.
Right,
And they can only base that off what they think they know, which I believe at the time of the conversation, we were figuring around 12, and anytime I step out, you let me know if I'm saying the wrong number, 1,200 units,
That's right.
right,
I believe, was the approximate number they thought we would have
yeah,
vacant. So in order to administer the program, we have to hire people,
yep,
we gotta build a pro, so we're gonna do all that.
yep,
And then here's where the issue lies for me. Let's say 1,200 is 600.
yep,
We're not gonna be revenue neutral. Let's say it is 1,200.
yep,
And let's say those 1,200,
yep,
600 owners decide, you know what? I'm not gonna pay the tax. Hey, my cousin John, listen, I know you move in.
yeah,
Or how do we know they're vacant? So the one thing I asked, and I think Councillor Pauls asked the same question, was can we use utility bills?
yep,
Because if we knew if the water's not running, you would know that there's nobody there. If the water's not running for 6 months, 8 months, a year,
yep,
obviously you would think it's vacant or they got some cool system to bypass paying for water. Either way, we're finding out something we want to find out.
right.
And I don't remember, Kirk, I don't know if you remember, I don't remember why we couldn't use that. I don't know if it was I don't remember.
There were some privacy challenges involved in sharing that information between you.
Of course, even
So
though-
for me, the biggest thing was, I think the vacant unit tax was used in somewhere in BC. I
Yeah,
don't know how successful it was, I'm gonna say it wasn't.
yeah,
There was a big hoopla in Toronto because, the good thing, at least for us, is we're gonna learn from Toronto's mistakes, so we're gonna navigate through that. But Toronto's was a mess because they billed a bunch of people and then a bunch of people said, well, hold on a sec, I live in my house. And then they had to figure out how they were gonna process refunds. It was an administrative nightmare.
right.
So for me, I just didn't see the amount of full-time employees we were gonna take on.
Yeah,
And then if it isn't revenue neutral, still gotta pay for the full-time employees, which comes out of property, we gotta fund that.
yeah,
And then if it does the job it's supposed to do,
yeah,
which is bring all the vacant units online,
yeah,
and all 1,200 units get filled up,
yeah,
what are we doing with the full-time employees we just hired?
yeah,
We gotta repurpose them, we can't fire them.
no,
I'm assuming the majority of them will be unionized, and again, Kirk, you could, again, if I go out of turn, you tell me, but the majority of them, or some of them, are not gonna be people, they weren't gonna be temporary jobs.
no, it's full time for the rest of the life.
So those were some of my concerns. Again, I'm sure if I was a counselor that was, if one of my colleagues were here that was pro VUT, they could give you the other side of the argument and as to why it's a great idea and how it's gonna help bring housing to people that are looking for it. I didn't see it.
Okay,
So,
my,
you can't take up all the time to asking questions, or I gotta let some other people too.
okay.
I'll give you one more. One more, and then
No,
we're gonna,
no, no.
one
Okay.
more.
Okay. My problem with this, okay, because I told you I'm working down near Barton, Wentworth, okay, very low income areas. A lot of rental properties down there. And I know, looking around and talking to people who actually live there, because they work in the same company I work for, a lot of those units are low income rentals. People move in, they don't pay their city taxes, they don't pay for their hydro, they don't pay for anything, you're cut off, right? I actually got one house right beside where I'm living right now, the guy got a generator somehow, he's paying for gas, and he's been cut off from hydro, right? The landlord that owns the 6 houses in there has tried to evict them. It takes 2 to 3 years to do that.
That's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're basically, by doing this, you're basically gonna say, you gotta do this, they put them on the market, people go in and rent, say, hey, the city just handed us a free check type of thing, we don't have to pay because we're in here now, we're under the landlord's act, right? And now you're screwed.
And I don't know, maybe some of the people that think the way you think are gonna pay the tax. I don't know, but I would think if you're scared to
Oh,
not,
it's cheaper.
to rent it out, they'll pay the tax, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a better understanding. I plan to put I don't know if they call it a granny or whatever, I want to start building unit for, it's about 10% of my house for my mother-in-law who's 90. I'm afraid to do it now, because I don't know how I fall into this. I don't want to rent it to somebody. It was never the intent. I just want a separate unit for my mother-in-law, so we lived with us for years. How do I approach this?
So I think Kirk answered that about, first off, if your house right now is not assessed as saying having multiple units
Right.
through impact, you wouldn't be declaring.
But it will be, because I have an inspector coming.
So,
What do you call that, secondary?
yeah, so a granny suite, I believe, would not incur this charge. So, and I would encourage you, we have a website, on the city's website, there's a whole section on the vacant unit tax, there's a frequently asked questions section, and it will list all of the particular exemptions that are involved in the bylaw, but I believe granny suites are not eligible for tax, but the website has all that information.
We're gonna have a workshop as well for Ward 14 residents. We're gonna have a couple dates early in the new year, like what Kirk showed, when you have to start doing your declarations, and we're hoping to have some of the staff from the vacant unit tax with us, so that gives an opportunity for residents who aren't comfortable, maybe don't really understand it. Me and my team will be there with some staff and hopefully walk some residents through doing their declaration. Yeah, am I eligible, am I not eligible?
I put it off till April, because
Yeah,
first of all, It's really hard to get through you guys. Every rule that gets thrown at me all the time, it's like, it's not hard for me to believe that new housing is down. It's just so filled with red tape, it's hard to do anything.
Red tape in a bad market, for sure, is what's holding up the housing.
Yeah, it's just, and I understand that we want to, but I seen your stat at the beginning, it's only hurting the city because the less housing you have, the less people you got coming in, and the less your tax base is going to grow. So I really don't understand the thought process.
That's the balancing around the urban boundary expansion, right? There's to balance no expansion versus, I think, controlled, thoughtful development is better than no development, right? But I have no say in that. Well, I did, but it didn't really matter.
Yeah, so I'm just a general question about budgeting and how budgets are made or arrived at. And specifically, existing spending. How does the city, not council, but city staff, determine whether the program is worth keeping? How does it determine whether there's opportunities for savings there? How does that happen when you're dealing with the city budget?
So as part of the budget process, typically through the summer months, each city department and division and program area should be looking at their particular program area, identifying how it's performing financially, how they should have a set of metrics on the outcomes and how that program is performing, and be able to make that assessment on an annual basis. And then they bring forward their proposed budget for the following year based on that assessment.
I appreciate the answer. There's, maybe I'm speaking in Turner, but there seems to be a potential conflict of interest there, right? Because you're a manager of the department. Why would you argue for a reduction in your budget? Is there a third party? Is there another auditing group that checks on that stuff? Or
Okay, a couple of things on that. So I generalized the process. So the program area has to pitch it to the department head, and then there's a process where the senior leadership, each general manager, they get an opportunity to question each other. So there's that at the staff level that takes place. We do have the Office of the Auditor General, who does have a work program of audits. He goes into his team goes into various program areas. They create a work plan every year of what program areas they want to investigate and do third-party audits on. So that does happen through that way. The final piece I would say is council. Council asks staff, tough questions from time to time, and sends us away to do particular reviews and investigations on particular service areas.
I'd like to follow up on that with Mike, because I think
well, I appreciate that. It seems to me that I've looked at the budget. It's you can go 300, 400 pages deep.
Yeah.
Even if you're a city councilor, do you have time or even the experience to actually look at that and make meaningful assessments of the numbers?
There's no feedback.
Right, and then how do you, so there's almost like an impetus to continue spending what you've spent in the past. And when city council comes up with other priorities, it's this and that, rather than a way of looking at prioritizing. But ultimately, budgeting, whether it's your house or a business or government, should really be about priorities. And maybe some priorities that you had 20 years ago are no longer a priority. And I'm just interested in, from a city staff perspective, how those get done.
Yeah, so I guess those three areas are how I would say it happens. Part of my role is to challenge people's staff at the staff level, to challenge what they've submitted when I'm looking for anomalies. So that does take place. But maybe not, like from the average resident wouldn't necessarily see all of that.
So it's not a case of where somebody's at the end of their year or their budget well, we got this much, let's spend as much as we can.
Let's do that,
Next year.
Right now, we've been doing a good enough job of spending without having any extra left at the end.
I'm gonna follow up a little bit if you don't mind. Mike was, yeah, in his benefit and his things that he's working for us, he's presented ways of trying to find ways to find savings. And I believe you've asked for audits of departments, and I think you're getting resistance. Aren't you?
I don't, so the auditor is independent. So we can't stop them or force them to do anything. We can ask. So my motion asked him to look at, it was on his work plan already, he didn't have a scope of work for an audit of the homelessness and housing file. So that, I don't know how much it is. How much was housing? 150, no.
185 million.
So the $185 million file, he'll probably take the federal and provincial contributions out and he'll audit, and again, I'm only assuming because he hasn't done the scope of work, he'll audit the $125 million that the city taxpayer funded, and then he'll create a scope of work, what he's gonna look at. So in my motion, I asked him specific things to look at. He doesn't have to do it. When I had the conversation with him, he said those are normal things that I would normally, as an auditor, look at. So I'm pretty confident he's going to do it. But it doesn't limit his scope. His scope might go even deeper than what I've asked him to look at. So, but yeah, I don't know that everybody was hip hooray about auditing.
Have you ever looked at getting outside people to look at, i.e. residents, to have an department that can help review? Do we really need that? Is it really necessary? Is that a really good cost? Someone that really isn't involved in the political side?
I mean, council can do anything. If we directed finance staff to go out and hire a consulting firm,
I'm not saying hire.
so you're saying how, yeah, so where you're allowed to bring your feedback as delegation, so you'd be able to come and say, hey, listen, I think you should cut parks by this much. I think you should cut this department, we don't need it anymore because we don't, we're cut back on your on your building department. We're not building any houses. What do you need all these employees? Those delegations and that new tool is where you can provide feedback. Would we ever say to 30 residents, come into City Hall and tell us what we should do with the budget? Well, then I'd be out of the job because that's why I'm technically supposed to be there. I'm not doing a great job of it, but that's why I'm here. So, but before all I want to say right now is, if we have questions for Kirk, let's ask Kirk so that I can send Kirk home because he's been probably at the office crunching that 400-page budget book since early this morning. And then questions for me, I will gladly answer all your, I'll stay here all night. It's a little hot, but.
Kirk, how much was used for consultants this year?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
I think it's a very high number.
Consultants are expensive.
I think we asked that question in one of the meetings.
So I will say that is a question that council has asked us to take a look at. So we are working on reporting back to committee and council on opportunities to not use consultants, create in-house capacity in certain areas.
Thank you.
So can I ask you, recently in the news, we heard that they're spending $7 million on some container homes.
Right.
I thought it
On
was 8
Tiffany
million.
Street, is that part of the 2025 budget?
It would be built in the 2025 budget, yes.
And then, so was that in the home safety?
Yeah, that $125 million, it's part of that. It's inside that.
So we're building container homes and two-way streets to address our safety when somebody can break into my home, cut my gas on, and get off with it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Barton, yeah, so the Barton Tiffany's,
I'm not too happy with that.
again, I didn't vote in favor of that, but, I mean, yeah, it's, I think it's 50 units that are gonna be, or 40 units?
Potential 80 people.
Yeah, I don't know, we're not calling them, I don't know what we're calling them, they're not tiny homes either, they want,
I'm not sure what
I
the,
don't know what the term
term
was, not storage units, but they look like storage units. But yeah, those are going to Barton Tiffany along with 192 new shelter beds that are coming on.
Will they be reviewing the people that move in, to make sure?
That's
people
not a
look
question
at-
for Kirk, that's a
I know.
question for me.
No.
What about Kirk?
And who's gonna maintain?
So how much of the how much of that budget is to increase the number of police officers or to help protect our neighborhoods?
I'd have to go back.
So I know when we had, from an encampment standpoint, I think the Hamilton Police Service had 2 dedicated officers just for sort of encampment-led issues. And then Chief Bergen was able to find money within his current budget to, I think, move it from 2 to 6.
So what about Ward 14? What do we do?
Nothing. From increased policing, 0.
All downtown.
So it's like, out of that 230 million, how much was dedicated to our Ward 14?
I wouldn't have an individual number for Ward 14. I can tell you that, and Kirk might correct me. I'm trying to think of the percentage of that number that is just salaries. Do you have that, Kirk?
Oh, I don't have that, but it's significant.
It's like, I would say over 90% of that,
Yeah.
$230 million is just salaries,
So,
right? So it's, and when you look at, I'll give you a stat on police services that have nothing to do with the budget. 40% of, and this came right from the chief's mouth, 40% of his calls for service right now are around encampments.
yeah.
So 40% of the phone calls he's receiving or his team's receiving is for encampments. So again, we talk about a balancing act. I think the taxpayers, me included, I'm a taxpayer as well. I know people might think councilors don't pay taxes. Unfortunately, I gotta pay them. We got a balance, like we're investing $125 million in homelessness and housing. And 40% of our service for police is going towards trying to deal with the encampments in the city.
And I'm assuming part of that public health and emergency services is going towards that product as well. No, I get it, I mean.
Yeah.
And this weekend, it's for the fire department.
And yeah, and the stress on the fire department. I mean, the fire department, not in the spotlight as much as the police are. Police seems to catch all the attention, mostly bad, which is unfortunate. But yeah, the fire department lately on the encampments are, it seems like every other day there's a pretty significant fire.
I'll say one thing, thank you for your help.
Yes, that's what we wanted to thank you.
We were really glad you helped us get at least the investigation done on our house when that
That
happened.
house got broken into 3 times, and you responded to us in a timely fashion. You helped support us with the police services.
Unfortunately, you can't do anything about the crown attorney that doesn't want to prosecute. So.
Yeah, the federal, that whole justice system right now, we got some major issues, but that's unfortunately, the one thing you'll learn about municipalities, it's the one area that affects taxpayers the most, and it's the one area where we have the least amount of funding, the least amount of support, and the least amount of control. We don't have a say to do anything, right? We think we have all the say in the world, but every time we want to do something, as Kirk, we got to call the provincial government to be like, hey, can we do this?
And we carry a large portion of this.
Absolutely.
But we get nothing from it. So like, that really makes me angry. I'm not angry at you, and I understand the budgeting and everything, and so far, I'm not unhappy with what's being done, but to put my money into a 2-way street downtown and not improve the safety in my neighborhood, I want to know who's listening to me.
I am.
How many
And again,
councilors are there?
when we talk about my votes, that's where you can tell if I'm listening or not, or if we are aligned in our sort of beliefs or vision for the city. But again, in order to get that message to 15 councilors and a mayor, I would say you could, you get your communications sent in to clerk, so it goes on the agenda for the meeting, or you come and delegate. And it's hard, people work, right? We're meeting during the day. We gotta take time off work to come and delegate to 16 people for the hope that somebody there is gonna live, or at least 9 people are gonna agree with you so that they can vote. It's a difficult situation right now, for sure.
I will look at the tool you described earlier.
Yeah, please.
One good point that you brought up, you're right, every time that a call is made up to the encampment, they have to have the paramedics plus police officers diverting to just doing to that call. So that is diverting the cost away from taxpayers that are paying into the system.
Yeah, I don't know that, I don't know that the impacts, the true impacts are probably, we're not able to, or at least I haven't seen.
I work in
true-
healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, so the true impacts of, you know, how police got 40% calls for service from the encampments, I don't know that we know exactly how many services we're actually diverting for, how long are they at that call for? How long are they when they take that individual to the hospital? How long are they off the streets, right? I get, Christine gets all the emails. I'm lucky that Christine gets them, and, I mean, I read them when she tells me I need to, but I have residents tell me all the time, when can we get
Yeah,
police officers just driving through the neighborhood anymore? It doesn't,
So I know.
doesn't happen, right? So,
So what's the answer?
I don't know.
I mean, I can complain to you, but what can we do to improve our board so that we get a little more recognition for the taxes?
I have some ideas, but last call for Kirk, and then we'll let Kirk go on his way, if you guys don't mind.
No? Yeah, Kirk, you did a great job.
Thanks, Kirk, I appreciate that. And if you do have the slide with the percentages, can you send it?
Yeah, I'll take it over. I'll send it.
Yeah, and then if you guys reach out to Christine, she'll provide it for anybody that wants to see it broken down by percentage.
Thank you.
Kirk, I appreciate you coming after hours.
No,
You going back down to City Hall to work on the budget?
There you go.
I'm done for the day.
And I'll make sure I tell Jim Zagaric that he owes you, I don't know what you drink, but whatever you drink.
You can crawl under the bus.
Thank you.
I'm gonna just make a couple of comments
Yeah.
here, if you don't mind,
Thanks.
okay? I was actually talking to my wife here tonight, that back in the Great